Here we go. All right, I see people slowly coming in, which is awesome. Here
Welcome,
we
everybody.
go. Yeah, welcome everyone. Awesome. Let me go ahead and kick us off. So, hey everyone, welcome to Maddox Digital and Customer Success Summit. You're currently watching Smarter Campaigns, Happier Customers, using data to anticipate and address needs before they arise. I'm really excited to introduce our speaker. And as I introduce them, I'm going to have them answer our icebreaker question, which is, what is your biggest digital addiction? So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I'm happy to introduce my former colleague, Kat Brigham, who is now the Digital Customer Experience Program Manager at Automox. Kat, take it away.
All right, awesome. Thanks, Dave. Um, hey, everybody. Hope you guys are doing well. So I will go into like a bit of a spiel about myself in a second. I'm going to pull up my presentation while I do that. Oh, hi, Talia. Um, but First off, I think I have to answer the question here, which is what is my digital obsession? Uh, I thought about this for a while. If I was being honest and not all that fun, I would probably say it's Instagram Reels. That's probably what like my phone would tell me is where I'm spending most of my screen time. But I'll give you a more fun one, which is podcasts. I love podcasts. I love true crime podcasts. I also love, there's a great one I've been listening to a lot that's been my recent addiction, which is called Normal Gossip. Let me know if anyone knows of Normal Gossip. It's a great podcast to listen to. So I think that would be my digital addiction. But let's dive into this, guys. Uh, as Dave introduced, this is Smarter Campaigns, Happier Customers. We're going to be talking about how do you build out campaigns proactively and use data to do it so that you can anticipate your customers' needs and address them before it turns into risk. Before we dive into that, though, I'll take a second to tell you guys about myself. This is a long session today, and there's a lot of stuff happening in the virtual summit. You're seeing a lot of faces. So I want to make sure you guys know who I am, and then I'm also going to ask a question to get to know the audience here a little bit better. Don't worry, it'll be a fun one. Things about me. Hey, everyone. I'm Kat Brigham. I've spent the past 6 years improving customer experiences, working in digital customer success, customer education, uh, customer marketing, customer success, whatever you want to call it, all of those things and above. I've built more customer facing emails than I can count. I have written various blogs. I've built out in-app messages, customer hubs, all the above and more. And I'm also super active on LinkedIn and always sharing practical tips. So if you like the stuff that I share today, you want to learn more, definitely add me on LinkedIn. I'm always sharing something in there. Things about me personally, though, I live in Park City, Utah, which means I spend as much time outside as I possibly can. When I'm not outside, though, I'm usually reading. I've read 14 books so far this year, so if you want to trade notes on that, always happy to. I have a golden retriever named Piper who's sitting at my feet right now. And something I hate, because sometimes that unifies us better than things we like, is slow walkers. So now you guys know about me. I have a chat question though for you guys, if you could drop it into the chat. What do you prefer, cake or pie? I need to know about all of you guys a little bit as well, too. Okay, ooh, I'm seeing it's a bit mixed. It's a bit mixed. I think though I think we might have pie as a winner, which is great because pie would be my choice as well. All right, great. So now you guys know me a little bit more. I know you a little bit more. Let's dive into the meat and potatoes of today's session. So like I said, this is going to be talking about how do you build out campaigns that reach out to customers proactively, use your data to do it, and get ahead of that risk. And I'm really going to try to get into a bit of the nitty gritty with that. I like my presentations to be actionable and you guys to walk away with something you immediately learned and can take and implement in your own team. So that's what we're going to focus on. To go through the agenda, we're going to talk about why these smarter campaigns should be the backbone of your digital customer success strategy, why they're so important. Then we're going to get into how to build said campaigns, all the way from data to building out the content to talking through the orchestration, all of the above. Then we're going to talk about what to do after you launch that campaign, because this is not a set it and forget it thing. This is digital customer success. We have to always be making adjustments and looking for the signs on when to do that. And then lastly, I'm going to leave you guys with some immediate examples that hopefully you can use to either leave and implement yourself or kind of get the your brain going on what you could start doing. All right, so firstly, let's talk through what is the value of campaigns like this? Now, digital customer success, everyone is a bit different. Every team is structured a little bit differently. Some of you in here probably don't even have digital customer success as your actual title, but you do something adjacent to it. With that said, there are some DCS truths that campaigns help us to solve. So firstly, one thing that unites us all is we're often supporting the entire customer lifecycle from onboarding all the way through the renewal and post-renewal. Secondly, our goal is always to keep retention numbers high. And that can be challenging in digital customer success, especially when you have maybe a ratio of 1 CSM to 500 logos, or maybe no CSM supporting certain parts of your customer segments. It can be difficult to keep those retention numbers high, but something we're always working on. The third DCS truth here is that the schemes that we build play the long game, often taking quarters to show impact. And that can be a challenge because a lot of times our leadership teams want to see impact sooner than that and have those quick wins. Where smarter campaigns come in is the value that they provide in addressing each of these and helping each of these DCS truths become less of an issue and more of a positive. For example, smarter campaigns allow you to define what the customer receives at each part of their lifecycle stage and understand what's happening all the time throughout the entire customer journey. It also allows you to proactively mitigate risk, lowering the likelihood of churn and helping, again, to keep those retention numbers high. And smarter campaigns are a great way to show early leading signs of success and give yourself some fast wins that you can communicate to your leadership team. Some examples of that, again, like showing some real stuff here, you might now be able to see how many accounts increased adoption post your smarter campaign. That's a fast win that you can share. Proactively mitigates risk. You can say, I'm mitigating risk by reaching out to all of these accounts and see and tell the story of how many of your accounts are being proactively touched. And then hopefully as well, you're able to showcase the thousands of ARR you save from risk by reaching out to them through every part of their customer journey. So that's the value. We're now hopefully all on the same page. These are important. You guys probably already do that. I just wanted to go into it a little bit, make sure we're on the same page. But let's get into the meat and potatoes. How do I actually build one of these campaigns that are so valuable? Let's get practical and go through the steps of it. So when it comes to building a smart campaign, there's really like 4 main steps that you need to be focused on. That includes, firstly, identifying which key product usage or engagement metric you're going to center your content in your campaign around. This is really crucial because everything you build from here on out is going to come back to this. And when I say a key product usage or engagement metric, I want you to think about what are the things you know that if a customer doesn't do it, they're going to be more likely to churn. This could be, for example, you might know that if a customer has less than 80% adoption of feature X, they're going to be more likely to churn. Could be different product usage data that you have, but product usage data is always a great thing to look at and get an understanding. If you don't have that though, I know sometimes those metrics can be tricky for DCS teams. You could also use engagement metrics. So maybe, for example, if they have attended X webinar or not. Once you have an idea of what you think that metric should be, I recommend pulling a report to see how many people fall into that threshold. So for example, if you think, okay, I think that 80 customers that are under 80% adoption of feature X is who I want to reach out to, and you pull a report to see how many customers are under 80% adoption of feature X, and then you look at that report and you realize it's 90% of your book of business, that's probably not a good place for you to start. You're going to want to adjust your parameters. Maybe say, okay, instead of 80% adoption of feature X, we look at who's under 70% adoption of feature X. Go through it, figure out what your parameters need to be so that you're reaching out to enough customers that it's worth the effort you put into making this campaign, but not so many that it's your entire book of business or is overwhelming. Ideally, I would say try to find something that impacts 30% of your book of business if you're looking for a place to start. Once you've figured out exactly what that usage data is or what your engagement metric is, that's when you start whiteboarding out. How do I guide customers to take action? How do I make it so that they get above 70% adoption? Or how do I make it so that they have completed 3 courses or attended a webinar this month. You should start thinking about what things you already have in your wheelhouse you can use, what educational resources already exist that you can plug into your campaign. And also think about, is there any custom content that you need to get made before you can build this? Do you need to have some videos created? Do you need certain branding done for your emails? What things maybe don't exist yet that you know if they did would really help to guide customers to take that action that you want them to. And then lastly, you take that whiteboarding session and you say, okay, great. Now I know what data metric I'm looking at. I know what things I have in my wheelhouse that I can use and what things I need to build. Now I'm going to organize all those ideas into the emails or in-app messaging that we're going to use in this campaign. And that includes understanding how many steps you might want to have in your campaign, what type of CTAs, a call to action that you want to have in this campaign. All right, so let's break down that last step a little bit further, because that last step is really, I think, where people get tripped up, is actually building the content and then orchestrating it and putting together that journey. So first, let's talk about how do you actually build those emails? Once you know what you want to do and how you want to guide customers, how do you actually build an email that is going to be effective in doing that? I'm not kidding, guys. I have once received a welcome email from technology that I thought was spam because it was that bad. And we don't want to be like that. We want our content to be stellar because your campaign is only going to work if your content is really good. So here's 3 things to keep in mind when building out a customer comms content like this. Number 1, don't sound fake. This might sound really obvious, but I promise sometimes it's easier to fall into that trap than you might think. It's very easy to look at some of the other emails that you're used to receiving, which a lot of times are coming from marketing teams, and unintentionally put that into your emails. It's very easy to use a gimmicky subject line or overuse exclamation points or include too many links. Those are things we want to avoid doing, though. We want to try and add in personalization wherever we can. Use tokens to add in the person's name, their company name, other things as well, which I'll show in an example here. But use that personalization. Make sure you sound like a real human talking to another real human, because that's what's happening here. Second thing, keep it short. Recommend limiting your email message to include only 1 to 2 pieces of information and keeping it under 300 words. No one wants to read an email that could be a blog post and is 3 pages long. They want to be able to skim through it, understand what that action is. And your goal here too is you want the customer to take an action. So make sure that there's not too much information in the email that would deter them from doing that. If you do feel, though, that keeping the information you share under 300 words would be challenging, this is a great example of when you could use a video to explain a longer concept. Video is a great way to give someone the option of diving into longer content if they want or need to, while still keeping your email pretty short and easy to skim. And then last thing, kind of going hand in hand with that, only have 1 CTA, 1 call to action. Make that action very clear and state your intention early so that they know exactly what they need to do and they can take it and make it easy. Because again, that's your end goal. You want them to take that action that will drive them to do whatever that item is you need them to do to be above that product usage threshold or that engagement metric threshold. I said I like to keep things nitty-gritty. We're going to look at a real example with this. So this is an actual email that we send out to customers here at Automox. It is triggered based off of when they dip below a certain product usage threshold, hence why I keep using that example. But let's talk about a couple of things here. Number 1, we do a lot of things to make sure we don't sound fake. We include personalization. This is a token here that shows exactly what percentage of something they are at so that it changes and is direct to them. We also don't use too many exclamation points. We make sure it sounds very much like we are talking to them, using phrases like, we want to get you out of the mud and hitting your milestone. Secondly, this is the whole email, guys. I did not crop this image. This is everything in it. There's nothing in here that I left out. This is the whole email. So we kept it short. We kept it just 1 to 2 pieces of information. And then lastly, we did also have just 1 CTA. In this case, it was to join our customer office hours. So we made that very easy for our customers to know exactly what they need to click on and what they need to do to take an action. All right. And then we've got the last part of building this out that can also be a bit tricky. So we're going to dive into it further, which is the orchestration. You've got your data now, you've got your content. Now you have to build out what that journey looks like. You can make this as simple or as complicated as you want or as you are able to. I will also preface by saying everything I share in this slide, take it with a grain of salt. I am not a CS ops person. I am very lucky and grateful to have a CS ops person on my team that I get to work with. And they're able to go in and actually build this out inside of Gainsight. But even with that, we still have to meet together and understand, and I still have to have an idea of what I want that journey to look like. So again, let's walk through a real example of things to consider when figuring out what is your journey orchestration going to look like. Firstly, you have to think about how do people qualify into this campaign and how do they not qualify? I like to think sometimes about the not before the what they do use to qualify. So for example, you might not want anyone that's currently in renewal or within 60 days of their contract date to be included in your campaign. You also might not want someone in onboarding for similar reasons. Maybe you already have existing teams that are working in those areas, or you already have existing journeys, and you don't want things to be, you don't want to be double dipping, you don't want to be overwhelming your customers with too many emails. You want to keep things simple in both of those kind of key parts of the customer journey. So you say, this email can't go out to anybody in those phases. Another thing we often implement in journeys like this is saying, I don't want this to go to a customer if they have received this email in the past 30 days. So meaning if, say, for example, I'm still using that product usage metric. If that product usage metric is not changing and growing and increasing the way I want it to month over month, I don't want to keep sending them this exact same email campaign month over month because one, that's annoying. And two, it's clearly not working for that particular customer. So we probably need to identify different ways to reach out and engage with them. So think about your qualification, what you want that not to be, and then what you do want it to be. In this case, we're still using that same example. Feature usage dips below 80%. If they meet all those things, they qualify in, they receive their first email. And I've written in here that first email is a great place to include video. It's a great way to get your customers attention right out of the gate. It's also a great way to, again, explain some longer concepts if you need to right out of the gate. So if you're going to experiment with using a video, email number one is often a great time to do it. The other thing to think about when you're building out your orchestration, your journey here, is how much time delay are you building into this between your content pieces going out? You want to make sure you're giving enough time for the customer to take some action, to receive your information and do something with it. So adding in a time delay into your orchestration is a really important thing to think about. This is also where you start thinking about, okay, how do I qualify people in and out of this? Now, in this example, I didn't qualify anyone in and out after the first email. I wanted to make sure they received the first two emails because both of the things were very important for us to communicate to the customer. But your process might be different. You might have something that says, after email number one, we have a time delay of 10 days, and then we look to see if their product usage number has changed. And if it has, qualify them out. If it hasn't, then they continue on in this campaign. Those are things to think about with the time delay and making sure you're giving enough time for action. The other thing you can look at if you're not able to see the product data in that short of a time frame, sometimes certain metrics only come through, say, on like a monthly basis. You can also use engagement within the campaign. So down here, we've got if they opened an email after they received the first two, then I'm going to remove them from the campaign. I'm going to hope that they have taken an action, they're doing something. Whereas if they haven't opened that email, we're going to move them on to the final step, which is in this case, both an email and an in-app message. This is another thing to think about in your orchestration. Is this a multifaceted journey? Do I have different types of content that I'm using in this besides just email? In-app messaging is a great thing to pair with email because if they're not opening your emails, but you still know that they are hopefully using your product, it's a great way to try and get their attention within your product and show that in-app message. So again, this is just an example, but something that you should be thinking about and be confident in being able to explain to whoever is going to help you set up this inside of whatever orchestration tool you're using. So congrats, you did it. You made a smarter campaign. If you can follow all of those steps, you're really on your way. You're able to figure out what data points you need to center everything around. You know how to build the content that you want, and you know how to orchestrate it. But we're not done yet, because we have to be able to make sure that we make adjustments and don't keep things too static. DCS teams need to be flexible, and your campaigns are no exception. So let's talk about what signs you should be looking for in these campaigns, and then what actions to take based off of those signs. So firstly, you should definitely be checking your email open rates and your click-through rates. This is something you're probably already doing. It's one of the best leading indicators that you can use to understand how positively received this particular campaign you've built is. I've added in here, though, a couple of benchmarks if you're unfamiliar or unsure, where you should be looking to know when is an open rate like really bad and I need to do something about it. Take it with a grain of salt. Everything is different. Every industry is different. This is just something that I personally kind of use as a starting point. If your email rates are lower than 30%, or open rates, sorry, are lower than 30%, and your click-through rate is lower than 4%, that's a red flag. And you should probably start testing out some different subject lines to try and get your email to be more likely to be opened. Subject lines are the number one thing that inform if someone opens up an email or not. So A/B test some of those. And if your click rates are really low, you might want to consider making your CTA a bit clearer. Another sign you could be looking at is a lack of significant product adoption changes. Again, if we're still using that same example of reaching out to somebody because their product adoption was low, if after a month or so we're not seeing any changes post them receiving this campaign, you might want to consider building out better content for your campaign, especially if you were just using what you had on hand. Sometimes it is worth it to build out custom content for a campaign. That could be a short video that your CSM team builds. It could be a webinar that you decide to host every month for this particular topic, and you promote that within the campaign. Consider building out something that might be more specialized and help drive that change that you're looking for. And then the last sign is just time. Time passes and a lot of things change in time, especially in 6 months and especially at a SaaS company. So if it's been 6 months since you launched that campaign, it's probably time to review the content, make adjustments, keep it fresh. You might have major changes that happened inside of your product that you need to reflect inside this campaign anyways. All right, and we're nearing the end here. So lastly, we're going to walk through an example journey of how you can use smarter campaigns throughout an entire customer life cycle. And I'm going to go through some exact examples. Hopefully this will help you guys to leave here understanding different ways that you could use a smarter campaign, no matter where it is in your customer journey. All right, so firstly, starting at the very beginning of a customer life cycle, onboarding. Onboarding is a great place to use a smarter campaign because you have some data fields already that you can use to trigger things, such as like a customer start date or a contract date, or even if you use customer stages and the stages onboarding. Those are usually things that you already have happening somewhere, especially at least contract date, right? You've got to have that data already. So it's a great thing to start using and use that to trigger off your campaign. This is also a great place to start combining email and in-app messaging to have a fully supportive campaign. If you think about what's happening inside of a user's onboarding, it's the first time they're jumping into your product, and it's the first time they're being introduced to you and what their customer experience is. So being able to use in-app messaging to show them around the product and email to introduce them to their other educational resources and team on hand is a great way to start off and, again, have that smarter campaign that is kind of automatically triggered when a new customer comes on. A second thing is when they move out of onboarding, right? So now we're in that kind of stage where they're a customer, they're not yet up for renewal. We want to make sure they're using the product as intended. This is a great place to define ideal product usage rates for 3 key areas. So define, say you've got, three main parts of your platform, or even just three main features in your platform that you really know if a customer is using these correctly, they're more likely to renew and retain. Get some idea of what that threshold is, get that very much defined, and then build out some campaigns. If usage dips below that threshold, have a campaign that automatically reaches out to the customer. Again, this is a great place to use existing educational content to guide the customer to increase that adoption. This is why we have universities and LMSs full of courses that you can push customers to do so that they increase their adoption and know how to use your product a little bit better. On the flip side, those same product usage metrics can be used to reward top performing customers. This is another thing that you can do within the customer journey, is recognize who's doing stuff really, really well. Give them some swag, give them a gift card, give them maybe a bonus, like a custom certificate that they can share on social media or in your community. Do something to recognize and reward your customers that are doing everything exactly the way that you want them to be. And then lastly, if we're thinking about through the customer journey here, they're coming up for renewal. Using a renewal date field to notify customers who are 90 days out is another great way to use a smart campaign. I recommend working alongside either your account managers or your sales team if they're also kind of involved in this process to make sure that you're not sending out double communications, and also that the communications you are sending makes sense. It's a great time to lean on a SME to figure out what you need to write into that content of those emails you're going to send. Bonus idea here is give some swag to customers that respond early. Send out, I don't know, a Yeti cup or a gift card to anyone who is able to respond and give you a positive answer early in their renewal date, renewal window. And that is it, guys. So that is how you build smarter campaigns. I walked through a lot of content. We talked about why you need to have metrics, why it's important, how to figure out which metric you're going to use to inform your campaign. Talked about how to whiteboard out what your ideas want to look like. Then we dove into how to build that content and how to orchestrate it. And then lastly, talked through some real ideas here. So hopefully that was all helpful. I hope that everyone is able to leave with an idea or understanding of what they want to implement, or maybe some new ideas that they don't yet have in their customer journey. And if you want to talk about it, I'm going to answer some questions now, obviously, but if you want to chat about it anymore, connect with me on LinkedIn. This is my QR code. You just have to scan it with your phone. I'd be happy to chat with anyone that wants more information.
Awesome, Kat. Thank you so much for the time today. Learned a lot. One of the things I learned is I can't believe how many people like cake over pie. That is still something that I'm trying to get over. I'm team pie personally, but there were a bunch of questions that came in through the chat, so I've been taking some time to sift through them, and I want to make sure that we have a chance to answer a couple of them. So I apologize if I go out of order. I'm just gonna kind of shout some out that I see here in the chat coming through. One of the ones that I think is really interesting is how long do you make a video for, and any tips for how to structure the video to be relevant for all recipients that might receive it?
That is a great question. I wish I had like a, great like single answer I could give you. Like your video has to be 3 minutes or less. It might not have to be. I would definitely say keep it as short as you can. That's really like the goal here. Keep it as short as you can all the time. If your concept can be explained in a minute, just leave the video at a minute. And you may think, Kat, that's not possible. I can't explain anything in a minute. Our team is building out weekly videos that are less than a minute that we send out to customers that just highlights some little feature in our platform they might not have heard about. So it is possible to do. I would say, yeah, keep it as short as you can, because we all know our attention spans are not what they used to be. We're all spending a lot of time on sites that, you watch something for 30 seconds and then it's done. So you want to make sure that you're keeping that in mind for your users. They're humans just like us. If a video is too long for you to even finish watching it, it's definitely going to be too long for your users to finish watching it.
I
Oh,
can
and then
agree.
sorry, second part of that question was how to structure it. Again, I think if you're keeping it short, there really isn't much structure. There's hello, then there's this is the content of what I'm trying to communicate and tell you, and then there's goodbye, or you can have a call out to your CTA, right? You can say, hope that was helpful. Click below to join us for office hours, whatever that thing may be. So not a ton of structure there, right? Because you're trying to keep it short.
I love it. I can't agree more. If you ask my wife, she'll tell you I have the worst attention span possible. So anything under a minute is definitely right for me as well. And I see that Christina from Vidyard is echoing everything that you're saying. So it's awesome to get some validation from someone over there. Another question that came in is from Sarah Jordan. Sarah asks, "Are you running your sequences through your CRM or another platform? I'd love to explore more options with more qualification parameters." So, Kat, what do you think about that? Are you running your sequences through your CRM or another platform? And how would you answer Sarah's
Yeah.
question?
So right now we use Gainsight. So we have all of our like customer data pushed into there. Like our contract data comes, we do have our CRM Salesforce that we push a lot of it into Gainsight, but Gainsight has a journey orchestrator. So we're able to build out the emails that we want and then trigger them based off of the data fields we have in Gainsight. That's a great way to do it. I have previously used other tools though. I used to previously worked at Salesloft, so we used Salesloft as a tool where we pulled in fields from our CRM and then used that to trigger off cadences inside of Salesloft. So that's an option, especially if you have a sales team that already has one of those type of tools. But there's also, I mean, there's tons of stuff out there that allow you to build out that type of orchestration. And again, if you, I think it's one of the backbones of digital customer success strategies. So having something that allows you to do that is pretty crucial.
Love it. I think there's a million of different ways that we could send messages out, right? And
Yeah.
multi-channels, obviously. It's obviously great. And on that note, actually, I'm going to follow up with another question that came through, which is from Clea. Clea is curious how you identify the best channel per message. Like, for example, when do you know when to go in app versus when do you know when to go email?
That's a great question. I have very strong beliefs on when in-app should be used and when it shouldn't. I think in-app is a very like precious thing, honestly, because unlike email where people can like unsubscribe to you or move you to a folder or whatever, you you don't want them doing that inside your product. Like your product is what people have to use to do their job. And if they're not using it because you have too many in-app messages being pop-ups, that's a problem. So I think do have to be really careful about what you use in-app for and what you don't. My philosophy on in-app messaging has always been it should be used for two use cases. Number one, if it's anything to do with a product action, right? So onboarding is a great example of this. A lot of times in customer onboarding, you need them to do something in the product. In-app messaging is the perfect time to use that. So if it's something that is a product action that needs to happen, and then second thing, if it's like product education related. So if you want to inform them about something in the product or inform them about maybe a best practice that they don't yet have and then how to do it, those are great times to use in-app messaging. And actually, I'll throw in a third one here. The other time is if you know that they're not engaging in emails, in-app could be another way to try and reach out and get that engagement. Because again, it's a different place that that person is living.
For sure. I think in terms of engagement, another question that came in, and Kat, is something that we answered in our past lives many a time. So I'm interested to see if your perspective has changed at all. But Chrissy, who led the questions, started with our questions today, has asked, when writing emails and specifically trying to optimize our subject lines, have you ever experimented with emojis, capitalized words, etc., in the subject line to help increase your open rates? So, what's your recommendation for when you do use email? How do you capture the initial attention of your audience or your recipient to make sure that they're not only opening, but they're ultimately engaging and taking action?
I I have very mixed feelings about emojis in email subject lines. I have seen them work really well. An example I'll use on myself personally is I open every email Grammarly sends me. I don't know who is making those emails. If you're on this call, kudos to you. I open every single one. I love reading about the stats about myself, and they all have emojis in the start of them. They're all like these like very silly, fun, rocket ship or a whatever thing that's in there, and it works for them and their audience. I currently work at an IT security software company. So if I sent an email with an emoji in it to my users, they probably would not open it. And in fact, it might just get automatically flagged as spam and sent into their spam box because sometimes that's something that happens. That was something that I think was preached to us a lot before, Dave, of like emojis can be flagged as spam, and they can. It really depends on your user audience. So I think this is where like the A/B testing comes in, right? Have one email subject line that has an emoji, have another one that doesn't, and see let it run for 2 months, see what the difference is, if any, on your open rates and your click rates.
For sure. I think that's really solid advice. The A/B tests are always going to guide you to the final answer, obviously, right? Because then you'll be able to track what's working and what's not and make decisions from there. Cool. We have one more question that has come in. It's from Cynthia. So Cynthia has asked, when you're looking at indicators and metrics, should the indicators and metrics that you're looking at be based across the board, across your entire book of business? Or is there a time that you should be focusing on specific indicators and metrics based on what a customer has been served in the past that ultimately changes
Mm.
the picture with the way that you engage with them? Cynthia, if you're still here, please let me know if I asked that question correctly. That's how I interpreted that. I see you're raising your hand. I don't have the ability to take you off mute. Can you clarify in the chat so that this way, if I misinterpreted that question, we can get you a clear answer?
While she's typing,
Okay. So she wants to be able to identify the differences
how
between the
long they've been
indicators and
with
the.
you.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Um, yeah, I think that's where I went through a lot of like, I think pretty simple examples because it's easier for me to explain in a format like this.
Yeah.
But if you're at the point where you already have these basic things set up and they're running well, then yes, you should start thinking about nuance in terms of, do we send different things to different segments? Do we send different things to different uh, user personas? Do we send something different if a customer is in their first year as a customer versus their second year as a customer? We did start doing that in my previous company. We did eventually get to the point where we did send different things based off of how long someone had been a customer, because to your point, like they now have a bit of history there. They've maybe done some things differently. A lot of times when someone was a second year customer, we were focused on getting them to understand here's what the new stuff is. Like maybe you already have a process in place, but we've improved this in our product, or we have this new educational resource. We launched a customer hub, whatever it is. And that stuff we start communicating out to customers that have been with us for longer because we know it's something that they need that our new customers don't, because our new customers, this is all they've known. So yes, I definitely think like if you have enough ability, if you have the ability to segment out your content even further and have that nuance, then go for it.
That's awesome. Thank you. And thank you, Cynthia, for clarifying that question. I want to make sure that we answered that for you. So thank you so much. Kat, it looks like that we have answered everybody's questions and we are now coming up on time. So with that, team and everybody, we will close out and this will be the end of our session. For everybody who has joined us today, first and foremost, thank you for joining us. And of course, Kat, thank you so much for taking the time. The recording of this session will be available early next week in our resource hub at Matic.io, and all Summit attendees will be notified when the resource hub is live. So again, Kat, thank you for joining us today, and thank you everyone for joining the session. I hope everybody has a fantastic day.
Yeah, thank you guys so much.
Bye all.